welcome to another edition of Bring In the Closers. Ryan Ray alongside Ben Samuels. Ben, how's it going?
Was that like a Freudian slip, or did you have to remember who the podcast host was, or did you want to were you hoping that Nate was going to jump in? What was that?
You know, Mama said if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. And so that was like a elongated not saying what I wanted to say, and I just went to your name. So I thought about it, but I didn't say it.
Didn't Mama also say that alligators brush their teeth?
Did Mama say that? I don't know.
It's from Waterboy. Never mind.
Yeah.
Not important. Never mind.
Umagabo Dada or whatever the thing was.
Yeah, exactly that. Yes. See, you know.
It's just been 20 years since I saw that movie. Sorry, it's slipped. So Ben, it's getting to late October. What's on your mind today? That's my NPR voice, in case you're wondering.
That was good, actually. I've been putting on LinkedIn. I think just like last week, I was telling people that they just need to come onto the podcast or listen to the podcast just to hear your soothing voice, and you're stepping up, and we appreciate that.
You're welcome.
You got that professional mic. You might just put me to sleep with that voice.
Wow,
it's pretty good.
Wow.
I meant that in a good way.
What a show this is going to be.
It's an interesting time of the year, right? Because we're just about 5 weeks, almost 5 weeks exactly away from Thanksgiving. And then, between Thanksgiving and New Year's, Christmas time, generally, that's kind of family time and people are kind of winding down. I also think that in the market, especially in the energy market, irrespective of the market that we're seeing right now, just because of the dynamics, I think this time of the year, you've had a lot of firms that have spent their money for the budget for 2019 already. And so they don't really have much of a choice other than to game plan for Q1 and kind of what they're going to be doing in 2020. I also think that there's some groups that have some money left to spend, and they're now on the clock because they only have a couple 10 weeks left in the year to put that money to work. And so it's kind of an interesting time in the market where there's a lot of things that are kind of getting pulled back. But if you're able to keep your nose to the grindstone and kind of your ear to the ground and hear what's going on, I think there's still a lot of value to be had. Perfect example. I just got this morning got a call from a operator out in Lee and Eddy, New Mexico, and they're looking to divest about 1,500 net royalty acres in some core areas of the play. And so that's something I'm going to be working on here in the next couple of weeks, trying to put that in front of some groups. And I mean that's an example of a deal that I wouldn't think that would come to market middle of Q4, but it's just kind of being in the right place at the right time.
Well, it kind of goes back to something that I think about is I was talking to someone last week and I said, I was kind of naming off the different things that were going on in November, which is kind of crazy because it's November and usually, like you say, November you're kind of slowing down. and the remark I made is I like, as I say before on the show, I like to have a lot of lines at the water, and then sometimes you get a lot of bites, and next thing you know, it's busy. But I think maybe the overarching point here is that if you are, I don't like the term lead gen, but it's the only way to describe it. If you're regularly generating leads and regularly putting people in the right position that you might capitalize on something, you do get stuff that's kind of out of the norm because you are, to use the term, you have a lot of lines in the water, and next thing you know, one of those lines gets a nipple. And so I think that's kind of what you're probably seeing here is that you do have a lot of different things going on, talking to a lot of people, and it's a cliche, but it's true. Sales or deals or whatever, it's all a numbers game, right? And so if you have a lot of things, a lot of people you talk to, a lot of people you communicate with, you might have 1% of those bring a Q4 deal to you, but it's a Q4 deal that you didn't have before.
Yeah, and also, I think one of the values of like you and I have, like you said, have a number of lines in the water is that there are a few deals that I have had on my plate for some time, but just have not been a top priority for one reason or another. They haven't been the most actionable item on the list, and so that this time of year gives me some time to really dig into some kind of some of the more of the off market and kind of ancillary stuff, and you kind of it's just kind of keep, like you said, keeping all the plates in the air and seeing what you can put together.
The other thing I like about Q4 and early Q1 is you get to hear where people think things are going. So if you sit down with someone and they say, well, the capital is deployed for this year, but next year we're thinking about this. Okay, and maybe they bring you in now to work on that, maybe they don't, whatever. But at least you start saying, okay, well, this group's thinking about this, and then you go to somewhere office and they're thinking about this. And next thing you know, you put together 4 or 5 groups and they're all thinking about this. It's like, okay, well, at least there's a sentiment in the market that this is where a certain segment is heading, that I need to make sure that I'm positioning myself. So you can actually get a lot of intel when people aren't doing stuff, but they're planning to do stuff, because you might, to make an extreme example, you could hear, oh, we're moving all of our rigs to the Mid-Con. I mean, no one's doing that that I know of, but theoretically, you could start to get that kind of information and go, oh, wow, at Mid-Con, it wasn't even on my radar. And so now is a good time to do kind of fact-finding information.
Yeah, this is a great time of year to be getting coffee with the people that are in your network and kind of just pinging them, seeing what they've got going on, seeing what they're hearing. Classic example, I can't mention any names, but I've just had a conversation with somebody this morning that they had heard that a pretty sizable group out of the midstream space with a footprint out of the Permian might be looking for an exit, not just to sell some of their assets, but a pure exit. And that was something that I've actually done some work with that group, and I hadn't heard, so that was really interesting. And so now I'm kind of my curiosity's peaked, and so I'm going to be kind of seeing what else I can find out. No, this is like you said, this is a good time to be kind of fact finding, and then you're queuing up stuff either for sale right now or kind of planning for Q1.
So I'm curious. So let's just call that pink marker. I got a pink marker right here. So pink highlighter midstream. So let's just make that up. That's the midstream company, fictional midstream company that you heard. I'm curious how you would handle information, because here's how I'd handle it. So pink highlighter midstream. Pink highlighter midstream. PHM. PHM says they're getting ready to divest. They're wanting to unload the whole thing. I would take that information and I would go around and start to talk to people in this manner, because presuming I couldn't use their name, I'd go around to contact and say, hey, I heard the other day that this midstream company, whatever size they are, is getting ready to unload all their assets out wherever they're at. Is that? Are you hearing that, or is this a trend that's going on? I'll actually take that information and ask people who aren't related to that deal at all what they thought about this deal that they don't know about, for general information, because they may go, oh yeah, well, did you know that so and so is doing this? Or they may go, no, but some of those companies are struggling because of XYZ. Well, then I take that and I go to the next meeting and say, okay, hey, I've heard that some companies are struggling because of XYZ. Are you hearing this? So it's about building upon that information. As we've talked about, I think maybe on the show, but definitely we talked about offline before, I know, but online, I don't know if we have or not. But it's one thing to be able to want to put the deals together, but it's another thing when you kind of have that mandate, hey, I've got a group that's got $50 million, they're wanting to invest in this, and you ask someone that, then they're more likely to think of that terms. If you take this information and you package it a certain way and you build upon that package, you can get people to give you answers to questions that actually extend your knowledge base, because you go, let's just say that the rates, the spot price is off or whatever. I heard midstream companies are struggling because the spot price is off right now. Are you hearing that? Yeah, actually, I did notice that the other day that 4 or 5 midstream companies we deal with, they're complaining about this. They're going to slow down their budget for the first quarter, but the bigger company. So then you just I just keep taking that information, what I hear, and just keep plugging it on along, and next thing you know, you actually have a lot of information from a lot of people, because I didn't keep going back to the pink marker scenario. I keep building upon what I'm hearing, and then some people might go, no, actually, I've heard the opposite. And so now you've got a different framework to operate. So then you go someone, you say, well, I've heard this and I've heard this, and so is that how you kind of compound that information, or how do you handle taking something like that if you're not doing the deal, but you're trying to use it for networking purposes? Again, not to close on, just to learn about.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think it obviously depends on what the asset is and kind of what the dynamics are, right? Number one, but at a high level, yeah. I mean, I think if I was looking at this PHM and trying to figure out the story, I would probably call a number of contacts in my direct network and ask the exact same question. What are you hearing about that's going on in this area? I know that these operators are out there. I've been hearing some stuff kind of offline. Has anything come across your desk? And see how they answer that question. Very open-ended, or getting more granular. A lot of times. So in this specific example, I haven't made these phone calls because it just happened about an hour before we got on air. But what I'm going to be doing is I know this area well enough to know, and I know this market well and this team well enough that I'm going to start making some calls to some strategic partners that have footprints around these guys and saying, hey, I'm hearing some stuff going on in that area. Are you guys laying down, or what do you guys got going on? And kind of reverse engineer, because if one of those groups says, oh no, we're looking to expand, we want to pick up whatever we can, that's like, oh well, okay. So if what I've heard is true, I've got somewhere to take it. Number one, so that kind of gives me a soft lead, but also that gives me an indication. If there's if there's a major, if there's a number of major players in a concentrated area, they're probably going to know what each other is doing, and there's going to be some trade of information. And then I may make some calls to a rancher or two that I know in the area if it was surfaced, for example, and say, hey, I'm hearing so and so's going on. I know that you were talking to those guys about a lease offer. Has anything changed on your front? Or what are you hearing? Or what's your buddy down the street looking at? And being able to kind of play both sides of the street, so to speak, is really valuable because if you're talking to, or if I were to call somebody at that firm and say, if I had enough good knowledge to like make that phone call, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm kind of hearing some stuff on the ground, that you guys may be making a move on this or that. Is there any validity to that? And it's not as though I would expect them necessarily to give you the direct answer, but one of the things that I think I do really well, and I think people like yourself do really well, is based on what the answer they give you and how they choose their words, you can glean a lot from that answer, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just about being able to talk to the right people, have the right conversations. But like you said, I think one of the keys is it's not possible to call somebody and just say, hey, I'm talking to X group. I think that they're selling. What do you think they're worth? Because that's too direct, right? You have to kind of put the pieces together and get there, on the back end rather than.
Yeah, and so agree. The only thing I would say differently maybe is, and not that I don't think you disagree with this either, is I'm also looking for as much information as humanly possible that I can consume because, maybe I got bad intel and the pink marker guys aren't really selling, and I find that out, or maybe they change their mind, or maybe they sell before I can actually do anything with them. But that information allows me to go to people and grow and do this. And I'm curious your thoughts because I had someone the other day. I think it was yesterday. He sent me a text and goes, hey, this is where I live at. How do I get with the kind of elite in crowd here? Like, how do I do that? And I'm like, well, I don't know. You don't know those people. I don't know. And here's what I told him. I said, but here's what I would do. I would figure out who, so let's just say they get the elite crowd, which is the rich people, the politicians and whatever. Who is on the outside of that circle? So campaign managers, executive assistants, people that are working for these people. Who are they and what do they want? Now, this person has kind of a unique business that allows him to probably trade sponsorships and goodwill in the community for being associated with his name and stuff like that. I said, so I would try to call up campaign managers, just to use this analogy, and I'd say, hey, maybe you want to come down here or talk to our students, or maybe want to come down here and talk to these people or whatever. I would start trading that because that is something that campaign managers are always looking for. They're always looking for free publicity. So the candidates that you like, you can get free publicity in exchange for whatever it is that you're looking to get. The same thing here with this information is, I would say that this information for me is, I may have someone who I'm wanting to get in front of, and I can't really get in front of. But I may take something like this and said, hey, I'm hearing that there's a midstream company coming up for sale in the Permian Basin. Have you heard about that? Now, not willing to just, I'm not going to break any NDAs or trust violations, but I might just dabble that out there as a way to get into doors that I historically have struggled to get into because now I actually kind of have some inside information. So I think you can also use information to get people to trust you, and not trying to be deceiving, but just through the knowledge that you've acquired.
What would you say if I told you that people like yourself and people like me are not paid to put deals together, but we're paid to know information in places that other people don't know that information?
Yeah, basically.
I mean,
yeah, basically.
It comes down to, so yes, being able to put together a deal and walk through the process of the purchase and sale agreement and walk through closing is valuable, okay? But that's not like rocket science. People can figure that out. I think what the place that you and I make our money is when we hear about something, we're able to figure out what the right questions to ask are, who the right questions, who the right people to ask those questions of are, and how to synthesize the information on the back end, right? Because a lot of it is interpreting what you're hearing and not just taking it as face value and copying and pasting it into an email and calling it a day. There's a lot of due diligence, and so that's. You just hit the nail on the head, really.
So let me give you a real world example of that. This is what I told this person. So I got the fighters that I manage, and now I'm the director of international affairs for the bare knuckle guys, right? So let me just kind of walk you through how that worked off. So I picked up some fighters to manage, and yeah, something like that. I picked up some fighters to manage, and So obviously they need fighters. So I have an actual direct, tangible asset, but it's the low-hanging fruit, if you will. It's the easiest thing to get in with those guys is through the fighters. Okay, so I did that, and I've talked to Dave. So after that, I think Dave's gonna come on the show at some point, so he'll hear all this. But but after that, after the show was over, I went up and I thanked him for having my guy on the show. I really appreciated him. Anything I can do to help you, yada yada. Okay, so that's a small thing. Then after the show was over, so I had a cell phone number. Anytime a big news release, they signed a big fighter, I'd send up, hey man, congrats on the big signing. Then I would throw out ideas like, hey, I know someone who knows this person. Would that be helpful for you? Or are you looking for sponsors? And so a lot of those things got a little bit of traction, very small traction. But I kept trying to show I had value, and I wasn't like every day bugging him, stuff like that. But and then we had another fighter get on the card, and so that was great for my fighter. And then I mentioned the fact that I have the association with the South Africans and the Bush China people. I said, are you looking to go to these spots? And he said, yes. And the next thing you know, I'm promoted to this position. Now, if I would have called him up day one and said, hey, these are the connections I have in South Africa. You want me to come and do these deals for you? He'd have laughed at me and said, no, don't call me again. However, I tried to consistently show value, ask for different things that might can help him, and eventually one stuck. And also there was other things I was doing, showing my value that I knew people. And so there was other. I'm kind of short the story out, but I think when we talk about information, you talk about knowing stuff. I think that it really gets overlooked. Is that if you know what people want, you know what they're doing, and you take the information, kind of like the pink highlighter stuff, you can actually convert that into a lot of actionable items in intelligence. Even if you don't close the pink highlighter deal or the bare knuckle deal, you learn so much of that process that someone else comes into your network and you're like, oh, okay, well, actually, I know all of these things that might can help you. So to me, there's, as you said, the information. I always like to say that give me all the information and let me make the decisions. That's how I like to think and operate.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's a perfect example. I mean, it goes back to, I think, episode 1. You've been hearing me talk about the radio station, What's in It for Me. And so you came into those conversations with the bare knuckle guys of where can I give them the most value that's frictionless for them? It's just pure value add. And the value add there is, hey, here's what I can offer. Here's the people that I'm in front of. Here's some of the opportunity. Is that something of interest? And then letting them on their own timeline, you could come to you and engage. Because like you said, I mean, if you had come out the gate, day one, like, hey, I can put you boots on the ground in South Africa, chances are you would have gotten no traction at all. That's but the way that you continue to hear them and work the relationship and then once you found it was appropriate. And I think that's one of the other keys is knowing when in the relationship is appropriate to bring these things up and not, and how to frame it, because even at the time that you did, I bet there's a way that you could have framed it that it would not have been received well, right? And right. So a lot of that is knowing how and when to impart the message.
Yeah, and that goes back to the fact-finding stuff, asking the questions, or, hey, I saw you guys were in Mexico. Are you looking to go anywhere else? Yeah, we'd be interested to go to spots. Okay, well, great. What about, and so you're right. You talk about the what's in it for me, and I don't dismiss it at all. I think a lot of people don't listen, though. They don't listen, and they don't watch, if you're trying to deal with in this case, the bare knuckle is kind of a unique deal because they're so public on what they're doing and where they're going. At least externally, that you can kind of watch them sign big fighters. You can kind of watch those trends. But even with that, I still have to listen to what he's saying. So I'm trying to balance what they're publicly putting out there and what he's telling me offline to make sure that I'm trying to bring him value. Because the reality is he can get fighters for his show anytime he wants. That's the reality. If you go look at their Facebook page, they can get fighters anytime. So I'm not offering a unique fighter. I don't have some elite fighter that only I have access to. They can get fighters all the time. My guys are not super well known, so I'm not actually bringing a unique value add. I am actually just one of the masses there. And so you talk about cutting through the noise. It's actually harder, and that's the hard work that a lot of people don't want to do. Is that you have to listen. You have to see what they're doing. You have to see what's going on here, or you can just start echoing the message that everyone else is, and then you also have to be willing to. Bring value and be honest, because there was one time where I said, I was told that this person can get you to do this. And he goes, do you know that person? I said, no, I don't. I don't. I just know that I was told that someone told me that this guy actually is the person. If we can get in his door, we could get certain things done. And he said, do you know? No. I said, no, I don't. I'd be happy to call him if you want me to, but I don't know him. And I think that also, I've tried to be honest where I've been told things from other people like, this could help you. I pass it on like, this is helpful. I don't have the direct access, or here I do have direct access, because then I say, yeah, you want to talk to South Africa, we can get that call set up. Then he knows that I'm gonna get the call set up, and it's gonna happen. And if I say I don't, then I don't. You see what I'm saying about not overselling stuff as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think we're talking about the same point, right? I mean, yes, right. You have to. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, no, I mean, you have to know what to do with the information, when it's appropriate, how to. Because let me ask you the question. Let me take it a different route. Think about all the podcasts that you listen to and the books that you read and the news articles that you read on a weekly basis. How often is it not until months later that information is useful to you, or it may take a year or a year and a half? But if you continue to read stuff on the same subject, you kind of build this base knowledge. It's the same thing when talking to people and talking about deals. You're hearing things all the time. You're talking to people on a daily basis, and that information, it may not like ping you that that was critical until like 6 months later when you're talking about something completely different. But if you didn't have that original conversation and you weren't trying to engage and just kind of keep an ear to the ground, you miss out on the little stuff, and so you never really get to the big picture, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I think one of the stories I heard a long time ago was, have you heard the story of the guy who traded the paperclip for the house or whatever? Okay. One of the things in that story was, I think it was snow globes. I can't remember. There was some item in there where he's trading up stuff, and he wanted to trade with someone, and they wanted snow globes. I think it was a snow globe. There was something, and he didn't have that to trade with them. But then, like 3 deals later, he remembered that guy wanted the snow globe or whatever it was, and so he went back to him, and boom, there was the trade. And so the information, I think, is vastly underestimated. Now, that's not to say that you can't be just a straight connector. You could literally just be someone who goes, Ben, you want to talk to Bob? I'm gonna hook this up. There you go. And there are people who do that. That's just not where I'm at in the space. And it seems to me that the information, until you maybe have that database, trading the information is where you have to be at.
Yeah, no. Let me actually give a specific example, and this might actually be someone listening to the podcast that can help and pick up the phone and call one of us to have this conversation, or call me. But so I just recently had a conversation with a mineral buyer, brand new group that's looking to deploy some capital in a certain part of the Delaware Basin, and I was able to get exactly what they're looking for in terms of, I know what operator they're trying to buy under, I know what price point they can pay, I know exactly what legal descriptions that they're targeting. And so if and so once I got that information, I called a couple of my really close connections, and I said, hey, if you find anything under these guys in this area, call me. If it's under this price, we can transact on it tomorrow. Let's get a deal done. And I already have 2 people, or I already got 2 in a day and a half, have 2 leads that I need to follow up on. And so, I don't get that information unless I have an ear to the ground and talking to, okay, so I found out that these guys have put together a new group. It's brand new money. Obviously, in this market, that's a really interesting dynamic because there's not a lot of new groups with new money coming out in the mineral space these days. But I mean, it's something that could immediately pay dividends. And if somebody else has an ear to the ground, like if I were to, so offline, I'll tell you, after the call what the specifics are, and you may have somebody in your network that you can put together right away, and those deals would never come together unless I was in the right doors, right?
That's exactly right. That's why we're here with Ben Samuels today. He is the greatest closer. I'm kind of NPR. I'm kind of NPR. Can I NPR, please?
Sure.
Thank you. We're here with Ben Samuels today. He is maybe the greatest closer in Midland, Texas, and Colorado, and Maine, as random as that sounds. Ben, it's great to have you. That was a fascinating story, and it's been an honor to have you on the show today. Anything else before we get to our guest?
I'm not the one doing deals all over the world.
That's all I got to say. You'd be asking for people's money right about now.
Nate said if it's NPR, we'd be asking for people's money. So with that being said, if you'd like to donate to Bringing the Closers podcast, we would be happy to take that. BringingTheClosers.com, and you reach out to us. We'll take your money, cash, check, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereal, any of those, gold, silver.
Any of these things.
These things. We'll be happy to take your money. Ben, before we get to our guest, any final thoughts? Yes, and you're right. I'm glad I didn't acknowledge the fact that I am doing the deals all over the world. I thank you for that. I appreciate that there.
I'm just trying to catch up to you. I mean, it's an uphill battle unless you look at LinkedIn. Then it's a downhill.
Wow. There it is. So in case you missed it, for our listeners, the running joke has been that Ben has very few connections, and the reality is that he destroys me on LinkedIn content, on LinkedIn views and stuff, because he does have about 2,000 more connections than me, and has since the start of the show, unfortunately. And so, Ben, I've admitted that you are the greatest on LinkedIn. I've admitted that you're the greatest on the podcast. Where else do I need to call Trump up, or where else do I need to do this at? I mean, it's sad that you have more connections and it's not helping you, but you do have more connections.
So Ryan, that's actually a good lead in to bringing our guest on, because a little peek behind the curtain, because I don't think you and I have even talked about it. My LinkedIn career, the launch of my LinkedIn presence, so to speak, was actually started by AJ, who's coming on to join us here in a bit. Her and I have been friends for a long time, and she was actually the one that introduced me to it and showed me kind of what to do and how to approach it. And at the time that she showed me, it was not something I utilized at all. And if she wants to talk about it when we get on air, we can. I gave her a lot of pushback on the front end. I gave her a lot of pushback on the utility of it, and she got through, and it's been an upward trajectory since then. So a lot of the stuff that I put together, it's because of this one coming on. So
you gave pushback on a good idea. That's fascinating.
That's fascinating. That's probably the first time you've heard of that or experienced that. I mean,
you gave pushback on a good idea. That's rich. Me and AJ are gonna have a lot to talk about, I feel like, on this show. We're gonna have a lot of content to get to. Matter of fact, if you could mute your mic when AJ comes on, that'd be great, because this might be a good therapy session.
I'm just gonna do it now. Yeah.
Okay, up next we have on AJ T. Cole, who is a senior business development executive at safe to save. I was gonna say .com, but I'm not sure I'm gonna say that right or not. Safe2save.org is where it's at. AJ, first off, I owe you a public apology, so let's just get that out the way here. A few weeks ago, me and you were exchanging emails, and I thought that you were doing the right thing and cutting Ben off the chain because he was going to slow down progress. However, it was me that cut him off because it's instinctual to keep him out of stuff that's important, because I try to get deals done. And so I blamed you because I thought you had done it, because I was like, well, she's really sharp. She would have known to do this. But it was me. So let me apologize for – I wasn't trying to throw you on the bus. I was actually trying to prop you up and give you praise. But I should have taken the credit there, and instead I gave it to you. So I owe you an apology for crediting you for something that you didn't do. So I'm sorry about that.
I didn't even know that it was a big deal that he was cut out of it until he raised that to me. And so I said, I didn't do it. Like, I just assumed you didn't need to be involved.
Thank you.
Hey,
thank you. Well put.
With good friends like the two of you, and I don't need enemies. I'm good.
Yeah, I was like, she knows what's going on. She cut him out. That makes sense. It was me. It was instinctual. So I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to, anyways. So with that being said, AJ, it's good to have you on the show. Ben's talked highly about you. And matter of fact, we were just talking about some of your marketing stuff with LinkedIn and how you brought him into the 21st century, which is thank you for that. He lives in the Stone Ages historically. So can you talk about maybe just at a high level, just your thoughts? I'm curious, because Ben was saying how you convinced him on LinkedIn stuff. Just curiosity, how did you get into the LinkedIn and networking, and what pushed you to use that platform, since we are talking to more of a business professional type audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started my marketing agency, which I no longer am, obviously I'm not a marketing agency owner any longer, but when I was starting out that business several years ago, I really looked at what could I do, because I bootstrapped my business. What could I do on a shoestring budget that could generate maximum impact? And I thought, well, I don't really have an email list. I don't really have any followers on social media for my business, but I do have this LinkedIn profile, and I have great contacts in that profile. And there's tons of people that are willing to network on LinkedIn that are open to invitations from people that they don't necessarily know. And so what I really wanted to focus on was hitting the pain points of people within my network, and then also growing my network. So first of all, at that point in time, it was considered the LinkedIn Business Premium Plan. Things have changed. There is still a Business Premium Plan, but now it's Sales Navigator is what I generally recommend. But what I did is I looked for executives in oil and gas that had some type of, marketing say in businesses. At that time, I wanted to work with more small business. And so I just went in, put in all my search filters, and just started networking. I said, hey, OTC is coming up. Are you looking for somebody to support your growth goals? Are you looking to do an offsite event, etc.? And so I was getting a lot of traction from that, but I was also generating a lot of content that appealed to those people. So what I also wanted to make sure is that whatever content I was creating for LinkedIn really made sense for my audience. And I think that that's the biggest challenge for a lot of people is they think that they need to be this certain type of person on LinkedIn, or they think that, they can say anything that they want willy-nilly nowadays on LinkedIn because it's a social network. And I think we've kind of lost sight in some ways of what LinkedIn should be and could be used for. So it's important to stay on brand and, focus on your goals.
So I'm sorry, Ben. I one quick thing there. Sorry, I just wanted you made a great observation. How did you go about identifying the pain points and making the content around that? Because sometimes, for instance, if we're talking about a mineral buyer, what's easy to put up a picture of, here's a mineral asset. Okay, that's not really the pain point, though. I mean, if they're wanting to deploy the capital, they might be interested in that. But you said you target their pain point. So how did you go about discovering what those pain points were and then capitalizing on that by making content around it?
So that's a great question. It really depends on my goals. So like right now, for instance, what I do at Safe to Save is I really want to connect with a lot of healthcare executives. And the reason being is a lot of their trauma, a lot of their ER visits are coming in because of distracted driving. This is great for oil and gas as well because a lot of fatal work comp claims, in fact, 41% of work comp claims that are fatal have been due to distracted driving. So I look at data, I prospect, I look at their profiles. I want to get to know what they're talking about. I look for keywords, things that they're discussing on their own. Are they already talking about distracted driving or my topic of interest? Are they already talking about things that I can relate back to a solution that I can provide? That's what I look for. So I'm not just willy-nilly messaging people. Instead, I'm really picking up things that they're already talking about. If they were in the media, if they were posting about something that I care about, that's how I make the connection. So I think sometimes people fall a little short and they just assume that every CMO or every CHRO or CEO wants to hear about this great product or solution that they have, but that's not really the case. And that's why people get so frustrated with people trying to pitch them on things on LinkedIn. So you really got to take the time to get to know what's important to them.
And Ashley, I'm going to throw this out at you. You can address it how you want, but I think one of the things that I wanted to kind of volley to you is that over the years that we've known each other, you've been involved in some pretty high level roles at a number of different firms and in a number of different capacities. You and I have worked on a couple of entrepreneurial things offline that we're able to put together, et cetera. And one of the things that that I've always admired and always noticed is that you're able to very quickly synthesize what the market is looking for and create a branding strategy around that. And so I'm curious if you can maybe dive in a little bit deeper and talk a little bit about that, because that's something I mentioned before you came on air, I'm on LinkedIn pretty much because of you. I don't know if you remember, but years ago, you and I had a number of conversations, and I gave you a lot of pushback on the utility of it, and it just wasn't something I could buy into. And then you finally were like, Ben, you have to just try it. And then it's been an upward trajectory since then. And so that was really valuable for me. Obviously, my business, I do a substantial amount of my business through LinkedIn these days. And so that's been a really interesting transition. But going back, can you kind of dive in a little bit more into some of what are some of the things that you're trying to hone in on, or what are some of the, just kind of talk about how you come up with these branding strategies from, you've been involved in oil and gas to recycling to, road safety. Completely different markets, but at the same time have been successful in each one of those endeavors.
That is a great question. I boil it all down to, I was that kid that would always ask why. I couldn't ask why enough times. I probably tortured my poor parents because I asked why infinite times, and I never grew out of that stage. And so I think I look at every single project that's put in front of me, and I really ask why to an infinite level of why should anyone care? Why should anyone give a crap about what you do, what your product is, what your service is? And I try to tie it into a few things. So today, for instance, I was talking about the 6 different ways that people are motivated. There are many different things that motivate people. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's helping others, sometimes it's power and recognition, sometimes it's influence, sometimes it's fame. I mean, you name it, there are a few things that you can kind of put and silo into about 6 different categories. And so I try to look at every opportunity as a solution to a bigger, costly problem. I would not say that my skills are necessarily the strongest when it comes to consumer marketing, but when it comes to business, the greatest way to sell your product or solution is to save another business money. If you can save somebody money, that's like step 1. That's such a no-brainer to get in. And so I always look at every solution, every product at how can it save money? How can it save money? If it can't save money, then how is it helping people? Is it saving lives? Is it improving quality of life? Okay, I can get behind that. A lot of businesses can get behind that. Look for ways that you can position your product or service to get to the root of what motivates people. And if you can find those motivating factors within your product or service, that's a great stepping stone for getting out there and creating a marketing plan and finding out what are your true goals, growth goals. I think a lot of marketers and CMOs in particular step into roles where they don't have clear expectations or tangible goals. And it sets them up for failure. So marketers will come in, directors of marketing, CMOs will come in, and a company will say, well, I want to grow 200% in the next 2 years, or whatever ridiculous number that they have. But the CMO comes in, they're not doing buyer personas, they're not digging into the facts of what is it actually going to take to grow that 200%, and do you have the budget to actually support that goal, or are you just throwing out a number because it looks good? And I think a lot of people get stuck in that ladder.
So let me ask you this. One of the things I've talked to people about from doing the podcast, especially more news-based stuff, is I've learned that the news, especially in oil and gas, is not, I always kind of compare it to sports. The Astros won the game 6-4, what it was of the night, and they won the ALCS 4-2. That's all information we pretty much know how to process. Oil and gas news, the oil market goes up or down, the inventory goes up or down. It's not necessarily relevant. And a lot of people inside the oil and gas business, they have a message that's directed towards the person that they think is going to make the decision. So if it's Ben, Ben's the operations manager, here's the message I need to get to Ben. The problem is that Ben might like that message, but AJ over here in a different department who is a part of the process, that message doesn't resonate with her. How do you go through, I don't want to say mixed messaging, but mixing up your messaging so that you are conveying to Ben and to AJ and to whomever else? How do you balance putting out the content to get the message? Because Ben reads the message to AJ and they go, that's not relevant to me. So how do you balance that out where you got multiple decision makers you're trying to get in front of or trying to make interested in what you're doing?
Absolutely great question. So number 1, segmentation is huge. If you're emailing people or reaching out on LinkedIn or trying to communicate without a face-to-face, it's really important that you are segmenting. So for instance, I'm just going to keep going back to what I've been working on right now. So CHROs, they are concerned about the work comp claims. CEOs, CFOs, they're really concerned about not just the PR, but the monetary value of what it is you're offering. How can you save them money? And so each audience kind of has a different pain point of what they're looking for. And then legal wants to know, how is this going to look if we were ever sued? So it's kind of boiling down to who your audience is, how you can hit each and every one of those key stakeholders' pain points, and how you can overcome. I try to look at it as, what are they going to say? Like, I try to argue everything. I was in debate in high school, and so you have to debate both sides, right? You have to know exactly what your opponent is going to say, what their argument is, and you really need to know it like the back of your hand. And so that's exactly what I do, is I put myself in their shoes. I do a lot of research on their company, the way they run their company, and I try to assume what their roadblocks are going to be before I ever even start that conversation, because I want to know exactly what I'm getting myself into. And generally, I'm not surprised by the questions I get, and I usually have the answers because I did take the time to do that research.
So AJ, I want to pivot for a second. I was laughing. I don't know if the viewer should see me. I was laughing off camera because of a conversation that AJ and I had last week. That was an interesting dynamic. But no, I want to pivot for a second and step away from the the kind of brand marketing role, because one of the things that I wanted to kind of pick your brain on. You've had a number of, I'm going to call them advisory roles to some startups that were looking for an infusion of capital, whether to take the next steps or to to get the project greenlit from the get go. And that's that's a really interesting space. That's a space that Ryan and I are consistently in as well. And we've we've talked at length on the podcast about. So I'm curious from that angle, how do you go about kind of providing value or proving that you have value to these groups that are are in the infancy of a business plan? And I know that and I apologize if this is an overstepping. We can cut this out if you don't want it said, but I mean, I know that you've been able to negotiate some equity for in exchange for some of those roles, and that's that's a fantastic way to go about things. And so I just wanted to kind of see if you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So for me, I'm not a millionaire myself yet, but I plan to be, right? Everybody wants to be a millionaire. Isn't that the goal? But the way that I have added value is I have unique skills and a unique ability to really dig deep into these different strategic ways to approach the market. And I look for soft spots in the market where I can say, look, we have an easy way in if we just pivot and shift our focus this way. And I think that by opening those conversations, and I've been fortunate enough to have a few great opportunities, come my way, a lot of which happened through LinkedIn and just through some of the content that I put out there. But because of those opportunities, it's really kind of spun off into all these other opportunities that came from it, because they've seen the success that I brought, XYZ company, and now this other founder or this group is wanting to do something. And so generally the way that I look at those opportunities is, number one, I decide, is this something that I believe in? And if it is, then I am willing to invest my time into making it succeed. And my time is valuable. I have a finite amount of time, and I love my free time. So if I do decide to invest my time with a startup or a business that is looking for funds, I am trading that time. I'm trading that time for equity. And so I will help you reach your fundraising goals or reach that, growth goal that you have in mind, in exchange for a piece of that pie. I'm not just going to work for free. So I understand that these companies don't always have the budget to pay me at the time. And so that's why I think equity is so important, is because you can, you're basically paying me interest on the time that I've invested. And, I hope to see the reward for that in the future. And, it's kind of like taking out a loan, right? You're not paying my fee. You're basically taking a loan out for my time. Kind of how I look at it.
So with that being said, we have a very, 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 very small equity stake at the podcast. If you're willing to come on, we'd be happy to have you on the podcast as a equity partner here. And we've earned $0 so far, but you can have a small, very small percentage of that. The second thing is, I'm curious about this, and I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way. So let me kind of flesh it out here. You have a very, and this is the first time I've ever talked to you. So you have a very bubbly personality. It's a lot different than my personality, right? So I like to have fun, but you're more bubbly, and that's not a criticism. One of the things that I've learned is that my personality, sometimes people like it, sometimes they don't. And your personality is, I would argue, is probably more universally liked. Do you play that up? Do you use that to your advantage because you have a very likable personality? You like to laugh. You like to smile. Like do all those things. Do you use that to your advantage, or is it just something that's just kind of natural and it's just who you are?
Well, it's believe me, not everybody likes me.
Well,
believe me, not everybody.
Ben, I'm not going to bring it up on the show, but.
I think my personality is, I am lighthearted and bubbly, but at the same time, I don't accept everything. I can tell people no, and I definitely have strong feelings about certain things, and
That's true.
I don't work with everybody.
Right. Well, and one of the things
No.
I've tried to figure. Go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, because Ryan, you're absolutely right, and I can give it a little bit of a different take because of the relationship that AJ and I have. One of the things that is fascinating to me, and I think is so valuable, is that she is one of the most calculating in a good way and intelligent people that I know, in the sense that you have this kind of front that you can be very bubbly and engaging and all these things, and you bring people in, but at the same time on the back end there's a lot going on in the head of kind of synthesizing all the information. So I think it's really valuable. I don't know why Ryan's giving me the look that he is, but AJ, before you respond, I'm gonna throw this to Ryan real quick, because I'm real curious what that look was. I don't know what that was, but
Did you catch that, AJ? He said you have a front. He said you have a front of this bubbly personality. Those were the exact quotes.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know how to take that, but you're calling her a fraud. I mean, it's like, whoa, shots fired, dude. Wow.
No,
I was trying to boast her up, and you're like, no, it's a front.
There's the outward persona, and then there's what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, I think everybody has that, but thank you for twisting my words into negative. But also, if we throw it to AJ, I don't think she'd disagree with me. I think that she, whether she wants to on air or not, I don't think she would disagree.
I will address this because I know why he's saying this, and
I'm sorry, Nate's over here throwing me under the bus on the chat. Y'all can't even see that, so
I'm reading.
Go ahead, AJ. I'm sorry.
No, it's not that I wouldn't say I think using the term front makes it sound more negative than it is. But what I do like to do, it's okay. I'm not mad. I am just saying that I can be very stern, and I do have very strong opinions, and I do not get along with everybody, and I do not always have the greatest fans because of that. It can be hard. Because when you come off as bubbly and friendly and warm, and I do genuinely believe that I am friendly and I love people, and I feel like I try to treat everybody kindly, and I am also, unfortunately, my father's daughter, in that I can hold grudges, and I can treat people exactly the way they treat me, and sometimes they find that unexpected. I'll leave it at that.
Wow.
So just to codify the point, that's what I was getting at. And you're right, I probably framed it the wrong way. But the point being that, AJ, when you're in your room with somebody, if somebody steps over the line, you have no problem calling them on it and setting them back in line. And that's all I meant. There's this line between I'm going to play ball and I'm going to be bubbly and friendly. But if you go this way, I'm not just going to let you roll over me.
Well, and the reason I brought it up is because one of the things that I struggle with is if I read like Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, I would imagine someone with your personality would probably be able to execute that strategy in that book very well. Whereas me, it's very laborsome. I can do some things in there, but a lot of the stuff is very hard for me. And so I'm always fascinated by different personality types because I have my personality type, and it is what it is, and I try to work within the who I am, but you have a different skill set, and so it's like, okay, I could see that being a very, very great leverage, despite Ben calling it a front, which we won't get into anymore. Safetosave.org is the website. That's SAFE, the number 2, SAVE.org. We'll link to that in the show notes. AJ, this has been wonderful. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed your bubbly personality, which I do believe is real, and so it's been great. We thank you for coming on the show. Is there anything else that you wanted to plug, promote, people connect with you? Anything else that you want to say before we let you out here today?
Yes. So I work with a lot of fleets, a lot of people in oil and gas, a lot of healthcare providers, a lot of restaurants. I work kind of all over the space to end distracted driving. You're probably asking how that all ties together, but I mentioned work comp related injuries. 41% are due to distracted driving, fatal injuries. It's really important, especially in oil and gas. We're kind of faced with a lot of issues, and Safe to Save is one of the programs that positively reinforces change. So rather than punishing people, threatening to fire people, that stuff really isn't leading to sustainable change. So programs like Safe to Save, I'm really passionate about. I was hit by a distracted driver last year, so I really want to end distracted driving. I'm lucky to be here. I was hit head on by a truck, and I'm here, all my fingers on my toes. I can still walk. It's amazing. So I want to help people. And if there are any safety managers or just anybody that's passionate about ending distracted driving, I would love to hear from you. Let's connect on LinkedIn.
There we go.
And actually, if I can get a quick plug, because I've been on the app now for about 2-3 weeks. From the ground level up, anybody that's listening to the podcast, if you're a driver for a company or if you're just a driver out in the Permian, I think actually, I guess out of the three of us, I'm the only one that has boots out on the ground in Midland. But I mean, it is absolutely brutal out there. You got to really be paying attention. And so this may be something that you want to bring to the attention of the company you work for, but also just on a personal level, it's actually really helped me. I drive a lot, and it's helped me consciously put the phone down and unplug. So it's something that I would strongly recommend. Just download it. It's safe, and then the number 2, save. It's something actually also, if you're out in the Permian, Midland, Odessa, they have some of the perks are like some small, local coffee shop type thing. So it's not just just the big names. It's a really cool thing. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Great point, Ben. Final thing is, if you work for a vendor and you're always worried about your safety rating, this product can help you with that because you lower your accidents, you lower your near misses, all that stuff. So, if you're one of those people, we talk about trading information early on the podcast, Ben, trade information. Here's something you can take to your CEO or your health, safety, and environmental guy or gal and say, hey, I heard about this app. We should try it out. This could lower our score and get us in with more clients because we're a small business, but we were rejected one time by a large company because we had an injury from like 12 years ago, but we don't have a lot of safety turnover, so it's kind of like okay. But lowering your score is important for some clients, and so this could be a way to help that for future clients that you're trying to get, or keep your current clients because some clients will boot you if you go past that number. So Ashley, AJT, I thought it was AJT Cool. AJT Cool. I think that's even better than T Cole. So can I just call you T Cool? Just drop the AJ, call you T Cool from this point forward. T Cool. T Cool. It's been an honor to have you on the show. I'm glad we worked through Ben's stuff. We'll talk more online. We're connected on LinkedIn now, so we can exchange notes without him creeping in. And safetosave.org is the website. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. And I will say, if anybody that downloads the app that listens to this podcast, if they enter in the code AJ Cole, as in my name, they'll get 500 bonus points, which is like the equivalent of a burger at a local burger joint. So check it out.
One word, AJ Cole. Just put one word like that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right.
Can I do that?
T Cool. Now that we're BFFs.
I think you already have one.
Yeah, you already had it. Okay. All right, T Cool. It was great to talk to you, and thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks, AJ.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was my new BFF, T Cool, with safetosave.org. And so, Ben, that went fantastic from my perspective. What did you think?
That went just about as well as I could have expected. I mean, we're 15 episodes in, so I'm used to it by now. Hey,
Oh, man. Okay, well, we are up against the clock. Ben, any final thoughts before we get out of here today?
I got nothing. You got all out of me in the last hour. I got nothing else. I'm
okay.
done.
Well, that's a benefit for the listeners. Thank you so much for that, Ben. Be sure to check out Save to Save. That sounds like a pretty interesting deal, especially as you mentioned out there. I get nervous. I drive a big F-250. When I'm out there driving around Midland, I am nervous. It's like, man, it is big trucks. Even just the big trucks on the road, there's so many of them. You just kind of play that numbers game in your head. I'm eventually going to get clipped, not counting all the F-150s, F-250s, and then all the other cars. So anything we can do to reduce driver safety is a great thing. And again, we talk about trading information. You're a vendor, you're a salesperson, you're in some client's office, and they're talking about something. This is the type of information you go, well, how are you guys doing your truck safety? Oh, well, we don't really have anything. Oh, do you know about this? And I'm going to hook you up with 500 points or whatever it was she said there at the end to get those details before you pitch this. But I'm going to hook you up with a discount as well. Those are the types of things that Ben and I try to use. It's in the noggin. We might not use it for 2 months, 3 months, but every meeting now for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to be on high radar going, okay, is this something I can drop for someone to make sure that this can bring value to someone? I'm not getting a dime off of it. She's not paying me anything. So I'm not like, I'm just saying, but for it could help pay me with a vendor or a client later on down the road. So that's it for this week's show. Ben, thank you for showing. Oh, sorry. And Ben Samuels joined us once again for this week's program. It was nice to have you on, Ben. People can connect with you on LinkedIn. You will be back on the next episode of Bringing the Closers. This is Ryan Ray signing off.